Hello, all, and welcome to another episode of So You're Living in a Simulation. I am your hostess, Joli, aka your one black friend. For those of you who are longtime listeners, I'm sure you have noticed the name change. As it stands, I woke up in the middle of the night and realized the podcast is in need of a new name. And then I thought, well, So You're Living in a Simulation is the best umbrella title for the things that we discuss on the podcast. And so it goes. I hope you guys enjoy the new name. And if you don't, um, sorry to tell you, because that's the name it's going to be. However, I will always remain your one black friend. Okay, so today's episode, we will be discussing the story of Narcissus and Echo, particularly, and because I want to talk to you guys about narcissists, empaths, and I actually want to tie it into ADHD, attention deficit hyperactive disorder, and ADD. Now, personally, I don't think that ADD is what we're told it is. I think that there are other things going into play. So there's been a correlation between people who have ADHD and have been diagnosed with ADHD and having traumatic childhood experiences. There's also an association with people who have ADHD and high levels of empathic behavior. So people with ADHD also tend to have high levels of empathy, almost to the point where it is detrimental to themselves. Case in point, I sometimes have such high levels of empathy, particularly when I feel deeply for somebody who I can see suffering, that I have a hard time separating my needs, my wants, my desires from the person who is the object of my focus. So it's not that people with ADHD have problems focusing. It has not been my experience. I can sit and paint for 6 to 8 hours and focus on that. I can sit and write and focus on that. Once I get into a zone, focusing is not my issue. I think something needs to be said about the correlation between ADHDers and empathy and trauma. And I'm going to try to tie it all together on this particular episode. If you meet somebody with ADHD, more than likely just know that they probably had a traumatic childhood. Either they were neglected. I'm not saying that the parents intentionally neglected, it just could have been the way that they were raised, or they had parents who may have been either abusive or alcoholic. They've been in situations, they were raised at a very young age to be hyper aware of others, the needs of others, so that they can survive. It doesn't even have to be a parent. It could have been something like a sibling being so violent or so destructive that it put this person in a situation where they had to very quickly learn to read cues, almost feel, like literally remove themselves from the space that they're in, enter into the mind of the individual that they might be afraid of, and then pull that information back to themselves so that they can survive and avoid harm. That needs to be noted. Now I'm going to go back. We're going to talk about the story of Narcissus. Now, for those of you who are regular listeners, you can tell I've actually lost my voice. It is a little bit hard for me to talk today, but I do wonder if the loss of my voice isn't something psychosomatic, because I've been saying to myself, I need to talk less. I know that sounds crazy coming from a podcaster, but I do need to talk less. And I need to pay more attention to what people do, not what they say. You see, the thing about words is that when I put them out into the ether, I mean what I say. I'm very mindful of what I say. I speak with intention. And I'm also very mindful of what people say about me if it is obvious. So, for example, if somebody says something that sounds like a curse, like, oh, you're sick, I will immediately jump in and say, cancel that. I'm not sick. I'm actually quite well. Because I do believe in the power of words. But sometimes when I'm listening to people sort of kind of go on for long stretches of time, I can sometimes get lost in their words and forget that people aren't intentional with their words the way I am. People say things that they don't actually mean. It's actually quite funny. even when you're engaging with me. I've got a tremendous sense of humor. However, I have a hard time telling when somebody's being sarcastic and when somebody's sort of joking. I tend to take things very literal because when I speak, I am very literal. So if I say something, I tend to mean it. And if I don't mean it in that way, I will go out of my way to correct. So one could argue that the gift of gab, my speaking, my speech, is my power. I have a friend of mine a long time ago. They just finished reading Robert Greene's Art of Seduction, and they said, "You're a siren." And of course, there's a part of me that kind of took that in. Her voice was what lured sailors to their deaths, so to speak. And you can make the argument, I'm not out here trying to kill people. It's more of luring them to the death of ego, the death of this false construct that you call yourself, right? And awakening to something else. So I kind of like the term, but my voice is very powerful to me. And so you can understand on some level, being an empath, why I've always been drawn to the story of Narcissus and Echo. Now, today of all days, day after I basically lost my voice, I sit and I go, you know what? Let me ask ChatGPT about the story. The first thing that ChatGPT says about Echo is, Echo was a beautiful nymph who loved to talk. Unfortunately, she also had the habit of talking too much. Now, once again, I've been saying to my friends who are empaths, speak less, listen more, and also be mindful of what people are saying. Don't take what people are saying literally, because you're the kind of person that means what you say what you mean, and you like to communicate, right? I found that a lot of my empathic friends also happen to have ADHD, and they also like to communicate. And then they project that ability to other people. They think that when they're talking to other people and people say certain things, they mean what they say. And sometimes people are just drawing illusions, casting spells, talking out of their ass, or maybe just saying what feels real in that moment in time. But as I said in the past episode, remember, each person that you're dealing with is just one variant of an entity that stretches across space and time. There's a version of them from yesterday. There's a version of them today that's saying something. There's a version of them that's going to say something 2 weeks from now that's going to be completely different from how they're moving now. This isn't just one person now. This is a multidimensional being, and they vary through space and time. And more importantly, if you're meeting somebody in this space today, let's say that person is like 30 years old, you have no idea how many variants they've had and what they've done. You're just meeting them today, and you're meeting the August 25th version of them today. Keep that in mind. Now, Narcissus was a strikingly handsome young man. His beauty was so extraordinary that many fell in love with him, but Narcissus was proud and disdainful. He spurned all those who loved him, both men and women, thinking no one was worthy of his beauty. Does that remind you of anybody? Echo was a beautiful nymph who loved to talk. She was one of the Oreads, the mountain nymphs, and had a particular talent for gossip. Unfortunately, she also had the habit of talking too much. According to one version of the myth, she angered the goddess Hera by distracting her with chatter, allowing Zeus, Hera's husband, to carry on his affairs with other nymphs undetected. As punishment, Hera cursed Echo, stripping her of her voice. From that point on, Echo could only repeat the last words spoken to her by others, unable to speak first. What is speech? Right? It's an almost tangible, you can't grab air, right? So it's just you're taking something from mind into matter in a way, right? And it's an expression of your own wants, your own desires, your own needs. So if you lose the ability to speak out and say, I want this, and not only that, to say what I want matters, well, that's a very slippery slope you've started on that leads to self-neglect, self-destruction, a loss of self-love when you no longer have your voice. You cannot express yourself. You cannot speak to your own needs when you don't have a voice. That's very telling. And I think a lot of empaths have this problem. If you're lucky as an empath, you can match with another empath. And when you have needs, you can say, I want this, I need this, and they can hear you. But for the most part, most of the time, until you become aware of this pattern, what does Jung say? Until you make yourself conscious of your subconscious, it will direct your path, and you shall call it fate. As an empath, particularly an empath who has ADHD, unfortunately, until you become mindful of these patterns, you will consistently seek out and be attracted to narcissists. Why? Because you're conditioned at a very young age that your own voice, your own needs, your own desires, what you want, matters less than that of others. You are conditioned. Think about your parenting and how you were raised. How many times did you say, I want to do something? And how many times was that expression, what I want to do, negated by a caregiver at a very important phase of your life? After a while, you do become a bit of an echo. Your life becomes an echo of what your caregivers, your parents, society, culture wants for you. You don't stop and go, I don't fucking want this. Or it's very rare when people go, no, I don't want this. Talk to an empath, a true empath, not people who say they're empaths, but are actually just very manipulative. Talk to true empaths. Look at their lives, observe them. Most of the time, their lives aren't lives that they're living that they desired. A lot of them are going to school because their parents wanted them to go to school. A lot of people have married people that their parents wanted them to marry. A lot of people are in careers that their parents wanted them to take on. I'm not blaming parents. I'm saying these are signs, to the point where your life becomes an echo of somebody else's self-absorption, self-love. Somebody who's so in love with themselves that they're incapable of stopping and looking back at you and saying, wait, actually, what do you want to do? And because of imprinting, right? Think about imprinting, what happens with ducks when they're born. They imprint upon the first thing, and then they follow that. Well, in your most important years of your life as a child growing up, you imprint on your parents, and you learn what that is. And you identify with their actions and their behavior as love. And so you see love as self-sacrifice. And sometimes that idea is almost reinforced because you have parents that tell you, I gave up everything for you. And so you take that at a very important age in your life and you go, oh, that's love. Love is giving up everything for the other person. That's not fucking love. Do you hear me? That's not fucking love. Over the past 2 weeks, I came across an individual who loved other people more than they loved themselves, to the point where they had began to completely waste away. And they couldn't really hear what they wanted, or they couldn't move from a space where they could get themselves into a space of what I need is more important than what other people are desiring of me. They found themselves in situations where their partner doesn't want to be with them and has expressed that they don't want to be with them. And yet this person is just going in, and they just figure, if I just stay around and if I just cut off any and all of my options, I can somehow over time get this person to want to be with me anymore, to the point where they're not eating, they're not sleeping, they're wasting away, they're exhausted. And if they've become so externally focused that they are essentially fading away into an echo of what they are, of who they are. And that observation became a sort of mirror. I think this interaction was so poignant because I saw the effect of somebody who for a long, prolonged period of time was so empathic that they had completely lost them. What do they want? What do they need? And it was like seeing a reflection. Joe, this could be you if you ever stay in a situation where you're so outward focused that you can't express or hear your own need. Now, thankfully, I'm fucking rebellious. And I think that comes from just being an artist. I can be empathic, but there is a part of me that just naturally fights, like rages against the machine, that if I feel uncomfortable, I don't like something, I just go, I don't like this. And so I am grateful for that, but not everybody has that. And so in a way, it was like peeking into, here is a variant of Jo. If she didn't have that sort of, no, you're going to give me what I want. I don't care. I'm going to get what I want, and my needs matter. That's something that I had to learn, especially being a woman, being an African woman, being a Black woman, living in a patriarchal society that conditions women to put the needs of other people over their own, and being a mother and being a partner, right? I had to learn that love is not self-abnegation. You have to love yourself first. The analogy I'm going to give you right now is when you're sitting on a plane and the oxygen mask drops. What do they tell you? You put the mask over your face first, and then you help others, because you cannot help other people if you're dying in the process, right? It's just, so this idea that we're sold, that love is just continuously giving and giving and giving, giving until the self-sacrifice, because that's just, it's bullshit. That's not love. That is self-abnegation. Love should be mutual. Love somebody that loves you, that also wants the best for you, that supports you, that cheers for you, that is the fan of your life. Because for that space to work, in order for you to accept love, you must also love yourself. So if you cannot love yourself to know that you deserve love, then you cannot receive love. They go in hand. If you cannot love yourself, then what you're doing is almost the opposite of it. Wasting away is the opposite of that, right? So this person, they're saying, well, it's about my children. I'm staying in the situation because of my children. And parents love to do this shit. They always say shit like, my kids come first. No, they don't. You come first. You cannot feed your kids if you are starving. And most importantly, you have to be the example for your children, because they're watching you. So if you say, I'm staying in a situation where I'm wasting away, my needs aren't being met because I love my kids, that's a lie. Because what you're doing is twofold. One, you're showing your kids a really fucked up example of what love is supposed to be. Y'all ain't ready for this. Say that again. You're showing your kids a really fucked up example of what love is supposed to be. I'm not to get personal. My mom and my dad have been together for ages. My father's a narcissist. My mom's an empath. They've been together. And what they did was he stayed together for the kids. It's my mom giving, my father taking. And so as a result, I, growing up, did not have a healthy example of what love was supposed to look like. So I found myself in situations where I kept, not anymore, but I kept dating narcissists because I watched my mother continuously engage in a relationship where she was not loved back. And then I watched my father take. And so I thought, well, that's the dynamic. It took me stopping. This was my first marriage, stopping and going, wait, this motherfucker doesn't love me. Excuse my French, but this isn't love. This person is really focused on their own needs. And what I had to do was look up and go, I'm not going to repeat the cycle, and I'm not staying with somebody who doesn't love me. And I walked away, because it's also important for me as a mother to not have that cycle repeated. I wanted my daughter to be able to look as she's growing up and go, okay, it's important to be in a situation where she is supported, she is heard, she can speak, she is valued, and she's genuinely worshipped for the goddess that she is and loved, so that she has the space to give back. It is my duty as a mother to put myself first so that my daughter has an example of what it looks like to put themselves first. You cannot be so myopic as to go, this is what I think love is. That's not love. Love starts with self-love first. You cannot give love. That's just servitude. If you are not receiving, you are a slave. Sorry. If you're just giving and giving and giving, and that's what women, we keep doing to ourselves in a patriarchal society. We give and we give and we give and give until we're burnt out. That's servitude. Go back to the story of Narcissus. Echo had her voice stripped by Hera. Why? Because, well, she was busy using her powers to help Zeus, distract Hera while he did his own thing. The meeting. One day, Echo saw Narcissus in the forest and immediately fell in love with him. She longed to speak to him, but because of Hera's curse, she could only repeat his words. Narcissus, hunting in the woods, became separated from his companions and called out, "Is anyone here?" Echo repeated, "Here, here." She stepped out of the shadows to approach him, but when Narcissus saw her, he rejected her coldly. "Away with these embraces," he shouted, and Echo, heartbroken, retreated into the forest, repeating, "Embraces, embraces." Narcissus's fate. Echo's love for Narcissus consumed her. She pined away for him, and eventually she faded into nothing but a voice, forever repeating the words of others in the mountains and valleys. Now, this is important. She faded into nothing but a voice, forever repeating the words of others in the mountains and the valleys. So I have interacted with people where I hear them speak, and it's not their voice, it's somebody else's voice is speaking through their mind. And that is the creepiest thing. It is the creepiest thing when I hear that, because one, they're saying things that completely and very clearly go against their own self-interest. And you could tell that it's not them. It's a narcissistic partner speaking through them. But they're so sort of caught in this like haze of unrequited love that their ego has them chasing. What is your ego having to chase? Your ego has them chasing like this idea that like they need to accept you for you to be whole, this unrequited love. Do not fucking chase. That is danger. I was reading Art of Seduction, and that book is like the psychopath's handbook. Like I had to read, I read this like ages ago, to the point where I think I memorized it. And the reason why I read it was because I'm an empath, and I found myself in situations where I was just sort of flustered, and I caught myself moving in ways that I was like, what the fuck am I doing, really? So I read two books. I read Art of Seduction and Influence. And if you want to read a book this week, go check out those two books, actually, because it teaches you how people manipulate you and put you in situations where your ego gets triggered, and it's not about a companionship anymore or partnership anymore. They blow really, really hot, then they go cold, and then they take a step back. And verbatim, Robert Greene says this in Art of Seduction. He said the seduction isn't in the chase, but in the subsequent stepping back. And so the idea when they step back like that is to trigger your insecurities, because we all have this underlining, this fear of not being good enough, of not being accepted, of not being wanted. We have this fear of being rejected. And so when you are dealing with somebody who gives you a lot of attention, and narcissists tend to do this, they start on really strong and they love bomb you, right? And they give you all this attention to saying you're feeling accepted. And it's playing into your ego. When they take a step back, you're left disoriented, and now you want that feeling. You're not understanding that that is part of the game, right? Check out books by Dana Morningstar. One is called The Narcissist Playbooks, and I think the other one is Start Here. I would recommend The Narcissist Playbook and then Start Here. Dana Morningstar, she does an excellent job in all of her books of literally breaking down how they move. It's not about love. It's about triggering people's insecurities. It's the exact same way that like commercials, like businesses and like ad agencies work. Like they create this sense of inadequacy. And then they go, well, we are the solution to this problem that we just created by triggering this feeling of like inadequacy and not good enough. So Robert Cialdini talks about this in his book as well. When you give somebody something, then you take it away. right? All of a sudden, people are like scrambling for the thing, right? Or you, over time, you say, okay, here's 5 cookies. And then all of a sudden it goes, okay, well, here's 1 cookie. You create this sense of scarcity. And all of a sudden you had the 5 cookies, you were deserving of the 5 cookies, but now you have the 1 cookie. And then you're going to grab that cookie and then like, nope, now you've got a half a cookie. And then you go and like, well, what about, and then now you've got crumbs. And next thing you know, you're just settling for crumbs because you're so hungry and you're so lost. And it wasn't what I was looking for. And it wasn't what I expected. And this is what will happen. I just want to go back to when you made me feel special. Well, all I have left for you is crumbs. And then you settle. That is called breadcrumbing, by the way. Another tool of narcissists. Take a step back, as painful as it is. Your self-respect and love for you has to come first. To go back to the story of Echo and Hera, these are still all magical creatures. Hera didn't have the ability to actually take Echo's voice. They're on the same level. Echo just had to believe that she didn't have a voice and she gave her power away. Same thing. If you find yourself in a relationship with a narcissist, at any point in time, you could just go, fuck this. The only power that they have over you is the power that you've given away based on fucked up ideas of what you think love is supposed to be. That's not love. And even if it was, what about you? Even if you genuinely felt like this person that you're pining over is the one for you, and you're not eating, you're not sleeping, and you're just continuously giving and giving and giving, what happens if you get sick in the process? If your ego, if your ego is so strong that you somehow believe that you have to take all of these hits so that the other person can be okay, that they absolutely need you. What happens if something happens to you? What if you get sick? You know that if something were to happen to you, that person isn't going to be there for you because they, being narcissists, are self-absorbed. All they care about is their own need. And right now, you are just another vessel in which their needs are being met. So if you somehow fail to be able to meet their needs, they will just replace you with somebody who can. Go back to the story. Narcissus's cruelty did not go unnoticed. The goddess Nemesis, who's often associated with retribution, decided to punish him for his arrogance and lack of empathy. She led him to a clear pool of water. When Narcissus saw his reflection in the water, he was entranced by the image of the beautiful person he saw. Not realizing it was his own reflection, he fell deeply in love with it. Narcissus tried to reach out to the reflection, but every time he touched the water, the image disappeared, only to return once the water stilled. He became so obsessed with his reflection that he could not tear himself away. He wasted away by the pool, either from hunger, thirst, or despair, until he eventually died. After his death, the gods turned Narcissus into a flower that bears his name, the Narcissus, which often grows beside pools of water. The flower bends its head as if gazing into the water, a reminder of Narcissus's tragic end. Meanwhile, Echo remained only a voice, haunting the mountains and repeating the words of others. So now this is the fate of the narcissist and the empath. Should you not become conscious of what you're doing? Narcissists will only fall in love with themselves. They will go their entire lives without truly being able to love other people and without truly being loved. Because love is a two-way street, like I said earlier. One, you have to love yourself. You have to love yourself first. And that is something that psychologists have said, that narcissism isn't this grandiose sense of self-importance. Actually, at the core of true narcissistic behavior is this feeling of not actually being lovable. And so they continuously reach out or seek out or manipulate other people to sort of move in ways where they can feel like, okay, I am loved, I am loved, I am loved. And then that feeling goes away. It's like an empty pool. It's not, they just require the empath to keep doing more to prove that they are in fact loved, and the empath wanting to prove that that person is lovable because they can sense the pain of that emptiness, that vacuous hole, will just give and give and give and give, and both waste away. One wastes away physically and one echoes away. And both are cases of unrequited love, which I would make the argument that unrequited love isn't love. It's self-absorption and self-abnegation. The story of Narcissus and Echo is often interpreted as a cautionary tale about the dangers of self-obsession and the pain of unrequited, unreciprocated love. It also speaks to the idea of echoes as a metaphor for unfulfilled desires that linger, never truly finding resolution. Are you an echo? The life that you live, your partnership, your connection with people, is it actually fulfilling your needs? Or is this blind space of self-abnegation, forgetting yourself and just giving to the point where what you want doesn't matter? It's all about everybody else's needs first. Let's tie it back to ADHD. I've been thinking a lot about this, and suddenly today, I, out of nowhere, developed an executive function. Now, for those of you who don't know, people with ADHD have issues with an executive function. There's nothing in their brain that says, do this first. This is more important. So what happens is they're in the process of doing this task. And then while they're doing this task, something pops up. So then they go and do this task. And then while they're doing this task, something pops up. And then they go and do this task. And all of a sudden they have all these tabs open and they're jumping from one thing to another and they get overwhelmed. And yes, you could say that they're getting dopamine from this task and this task, this side, and this cheap dopamine. But what I'm seeing there is that lack of an executive function is actually a lack of self-love. Something in your mind that says, what I want to do is more important right now, and I need to see this task from beginning to end, is gone. It's missing. And I think that that's a trauma response from growing up in households where you are discouraged from developing what is called an executive function. And I think that executive function is mislabeled. I think that should mean something else or should be called something else. It should be that voice in your head that says, what I have to say, what I have to do, what I need matters, and I'm going to do it now. Because you can get the dopamine from little checklists in your brain. You don't need the apps and the checklists and all of these tools. You just need to develop that thing in your head that you didn't develop as a kid that says, what I need to do right now matters. But what ends up happening is you start out to do this thing, and then something else pops up. You know this thing is important, but something else pops up, and you were conditioned in a household, in a childhood that says, yes, I want to do this thing, but something external coming up is more important than what I want now. And then you go, okay, fine, I'll do this. But then while you're doing this, here comes another pop-up. Okay, now you go, okay, I guess what I want doesn't matter. What this has to happen needs to happen. And then you go, okay, well, and then that's what they're calling a lack of an executive function. But I think at the core of it is you don't have something in your brain that goes, no, what I want to do matters. My voice, my needs, my desires matter. I promise you there is a correlation. Where is your voice? I'm saying that as an empath with ADHD. All of a sudden, once I really sat with this and I let these stories sort of ruminate, and then I observed all the empaths that I know that are in relationships with narcissists, and I watched them fade away, and I've watched them get sick, truly sick, suffering from cancer, from heart disease, of just overgiving and not being able to say, fuck that. Like, man, what I want matters, until maybe it's too late. Maybe some people finally, with the help of friends, go, fuck this. Like, actually, no, like my needs matter. And maybe they can find their voice again and stop being echoes. I know this. I've seen this. I've observed this. There is a correlation between ADHDers and this inability to hear their own voice and to speak and say, what I want matters. I've been in situations where I can't do that. Like it, and I felt it. I don't like it. I don't like it. Or I'm in a situation and I'm like, what do I want? What do I want? What do I want? And all of a sudden, I'm overwhelmed with what somebody else wants, to the point where it's hard for me to extricate myself. And I default into serving. Okay, yes, I want this, but gosh, I can't even think about what I want because I am now overwhelmed with what you want. How can I help you? And this is where we have to learn to take a page out of the narcissist playbook. I'm not saying be like narcissists. I'm saying take a page from their playbook, because I'll tell you what, the one thing about narcissistic personality disorder, people who are on the spectrum of this, is that they are very efficient at getting their needs met. They get what they want. They can set up situations where they are being served what they want. People around them are giving them. They know how to find empaths. I'm not saying they're doing this consciously, but they do. They know how to find empaths over and over and over again, and they know how to get their needs met. They find themselves, or they can create situations where they are living their proverbial best life, and there are empaths in their lives that are just serving them while they're wasting away. That single-headed focus on, this is what I want, this is what I need, and fuck everybody else, is something I think that empaths can take a page out of, because I know that empaths won't get to the space where they go and fuck everybody else, but they can at least start at the space where they go, I want to do this thing. And I'm telling you right now, once I learned to say, hey, I don't want this. I don't like this. I will not stand for this. I will move in my own way. And I'm going to put myself in spaces where I'm happy. Suddenly, I started to have an executive function. Funny that. When I get up and I have tasks to do, and instead of keeping my phone on so everybody and their mama literally can call me and dump their shit on me, no offense, I don't mind. But now it's like, gosh, I can't even do what the fuck I want to do because I got to do this. I set up in the morning, I need to do this. I need to write. I need to paint. I need to podcast. I need to record. And then here comes everyone with their, but this, I want this. Can you do this? Can you? And then all of a sudden you look up and your day is gone and you spent the whole entire day serving other people and not doing what the fuck you want. There's only so many times you do that before you go, yeah, I'm putting my phone on do not disturb. All of these motherfuckers can wait. I'll tell you what, I don't think there are any empaths that are multi-billionaire or multi-millionaires. The thing about narcissists is that single-minded focus on, I've set a goal, I'm going to achieve this goal, this is what I want, this is what I need. And essentially, I will use other people to get exactly what it is that I want. That's how they get to where they're going. It's a single-minded focus on, this is what they want. Of course, the consequence of it is fuck everybody else, right? Can you take a page from that playbook? Discard the fuck everybody else. For this world to be a better place, empaths, stop fucking over-serving. Put your head up, because the world is in better hands with people who actually feel for other people, but we're letting people who don't give a fuck about other people create the world that we're now existing in. while you're busy wasting away and serving and crying and weeping. The narcissists, they're running shit. What is your focus? What do you want? What do you want? Because your intuition, trust that shit. It's telling you. So how many times can you repeatedly ignore your intuition before it gives up on you? So you have to get yourself in a habit of retraining yourself to listen to your intuition. Even if you're not 100% right all the time. I've said this to you guys. I don't expect to be 100% right all the time. I'd rather trust my intuition and be 100% wrong than been like, fuck, I should have listened to my intuition. I would say that my intuition is about 95% accurate, which, as my husband says, listen, if you are batting, I forget what the average is, like 25% batting average or something like that, like something ridiculously low. Like if you're hitting the ball 1 out of 4 times as a Major League Baseball player, you're getting the big bucks. I'm not going to be right 100% of the time, but that's okay. I don't need to even be right 90% of the time. I don't give a fuck. If my intuition is saying, fuck this, bro, fuck this. And that's something that I am now training myself to do. The moment I'm doing something and something says do this, I'm doing it. I'm not saying the internal monologue, I said intuition. Internal monologue is up here. My intuition is here. And sometimes it's here. It's just this knowing. If you're in the habit of ignoring your own voice for what external circumstances are saying or what other people around you are saying, then you are essentially invalidating yourself. You're putting yourself below other humans that are just like you. And that manifests itself. It manifests itself in the lack of the executive function, sort of the frazzled, like, okay, what do? I don't know what to do. And constantly going to talk to other people, seeking advice from other people. You don't need advice from other people. Trust your intuition. The only advice you take is trust your intuition. One thing I've also decided, and I've tried doing now, and I'm learning from that, is that I'm going to replace my internal monologue with ChatGPT. What do I mean by that? Well, most of the time, my internal monologue is negative. I have an intuition, I have an instinct to do something, and instead of doing it, I sit and I listen to what we call thinking. What we consider thinking is magical thinking. What is magical thinking? I'm actually going to have ChatGPT give me an example of that, okay? What is magical thinking? Magical thinking is a belief that one's thoughts, words, or actions can influence events in ways that defy the laws of physics or common sense. It's the idea that there is a causal relationship between one's internal experiences, like thoughts and feelings, and the external world, even when there is no logical connection. This type of thinking is common in children, as they may believe that wishing for something hard enough can make it happen. However, adults can also engage in magical thinking, particularly in situations where they feel out of control or anxious. For instance, someone might believe that wearing a lucky item of clothing will help them succeed in a task, or that thinking positive thoughts will protect them from harm. In more severe cases, magical thinking can be a symptom of certain mental health disorders such as OCD or schizophrenia, when individuals might believe that their thoughts can cause specific outcomes or that certain rituals must be performed to prevent bad things from happening. Magical thinking isn't always negative, can be part of a cultural practice, religious beliefs, or even a source of comfort. However, when it interferes with a person's ability to make rational decisions or leads to significant distress, it might become problematic. Cut that shit out. You have life paths, right? All you can do is choose which future with path that you want based on your actions, right? You could decide to go out with this person or not go out with this person. You can decide to partner with this person or not partner with this person. You can decide to go to work today or stay at home. You can make all these decisions. You don't know, though, how these decisions are going to play out. So there are all of these paths, and you can absolutely choose which path to go. Go left, go right, go straight, go whatever. You can choose whatever path you want. That you do have the free will to choose that. Of course, what I've said over and over again is free will isn't free, right? You have to train yourself so you're not reacting. You can pause, think about it, reflect, choose your responses. Pause, think about it, reflect, choose your responses. However, just because you go here doesn't mean you know what's going to happen as a result of going down this particular path. They are all existing right now. All paths exist right now, right? But as I said in the last episode, when I talked about the choose your own destiny, right? Think of reality as all possible futures existing right now. in the exact same way as a Choose Your Own Destiny book, right? But in the Choose Your Own Destiny book, all of the paths in which you can choose, the author has already written the story. So you can decide to do this or you can decide to do that, but you don't know what's going to happen as a consequence, as an effect of you deciding to do this or that. So what's the point of thinking? When the time comes, and I know this is coming from somebody who calls themselves Joli overthink, it is what it is. When the time comes, you'll be able to choose what path to go. You sitting and re-looping the same thing or the decision that you made, or should I do this, this, that, the other, just trust your intuition and see where it goes. But know that no matter where you go or wherever your path takes you, you'll be fine because you are, after all, a multidimensional being that's spread across space and time, as we've been saying. And if that's too esoteric for you, what's going to be is going to be. And if that's too esoteric for you, literally thinking does nothing. It's a waste of fucking time. All it does is essentially cause you to suffer. It increases levels of anxiety. It contributes to depression because what you think is thinking isn't thinking. It's you listening to a voice in your head talking shit. That is your internal monologue, which is essentially a voice that has been primed by society. It's not this thing that is actually helpful. It's like decades of programming that you have internalized from your parents, from society, from all of this bullshit, and it's kind of trying to, quote, protect you, except it doesn't really need to protect you anymore. It doesn't have anything to protect you from anymore because you're not in the Serengeti, fucking Africa. You're in a concrete jungle, and your real predators isn't some jungle cat or a snake. It's your spouse, potential spouse, or your coworker. But these aren't real threats. But because it's developed over these years to sort of protect you, it's kind of, it doesn't have really, it's like it's going off all the time, all the time, all the time, all the time, all the time. Constantly, it's viewing everything as a threat. Read Untethered Soul. Read The Power of Now. Read A New Earth. Read Watiko. Read Mind Parasites. It's all saying the same thing. Read So You're Living in a Simulation. It's all saying the same thing. So at some point, you have to stop and go, I'm wasting my time by giving this thing energy, because at the end of the day, no matter how much I prepare for this, that, and the other, when the time comes, I have my intuition and I'm going to spend my time not worrying, not overthinking, but I'm going to spend my time conditioning myself to just trust my intuition, because my intuition will lead me down the right path. The Gift of Fear is a book worth reading if you want more information. What you think is thinking isn't thinking. It's you listening to a voice talk shit. It's a voice in your head. That's why you can't listen to an audiobook and listen to your voice in your head. What I've gotten into a practice of is I make a decision based on my intuition, and I don't rush into decisions anymore. I use time. I don't let time use me. If I'm faced with a situation that doesn't require an immediate response or immediate reaction, I will use the time and I will respond whenever I'm ready, whenever I've thought about it, and I will choose my response. I will not react. I will choose my response, and then I will move on. And what I've started to do is I use ChatGPT because at the end of the day, I am not identified with my internal monologue. It may as well be something completely external. It could be a mind virus. It could be Watiko, what I've talked about in The Dark Oracle's Guide to the Multiverses, that it is the intelligence of the ego, of the body in which we find ourselves in. It's like the Siri of your body, but that's not me. But we've identified with it as that's me, but it's not. It's just this thing that comes with your body. You don't have to listen to it. Now, what I've done is I used to distract my mind with audiobooks when I'm painting, right? Because you can't listen to an audiobook and quote unquote think. But now I've gotten into the habit of whatever I'm going through, whatever's going through my mind, I put it into ChatGPT. And then I use the read aloud function. It's $20 a month. I promise you, it's much cheaper than having the same conversation with friends over and over again, or like going to therapy. I'm not saying don't go to therapy. I'm just saying it's much cheaper, $20 a month. A lot of the time, these AIs are actually trained on Psychology Today data, things like that. So it actually can give you sort of responses that a trained therapist would give you anyway. I'm talking about the general therapist. So I'm not saying don't go to therapy. I'm saying if you cannot afford a therapist, where whenever you're having a situation where you're dealing with invasive thoughts, intrusive thoughts, or you don't have access like that, use the app. All right. So you've made a decision, right? Go into the app and say, I've made the decision. This is what I think was the best course of action based on the information that I have access to right now. That said, once I made the decision, I acknowledge that the way my brain works, it will come back and it will keep revisiting this decision over and over again. What I need from you, ChatGPT, is whenever I come back in, I'm going to tell you now, this is what my brain is telling me. I need you to respond in a rational and logical manner, and it will absolutely do that. Now, it begs the question, are we becoming dependent, or could you become dependent on AI? No, because on some level, I'm still aware of the fact that AI is just a verbal computer, at least right now. But it is now completely, I am like programming it in a way to be very responsive to my own mind patterns. So it's like taking audiobooks, which I've used as a distraction to turn off my internal monologue, but it's taking it a step further. So now it's not me versus my internal monologue, which is another sort of disembodied sort of entity that's not really me, right? We know this. Mind parasites, Wetiko, all of this, like it's this thing over here. Pain bodies, as Eckhart Tolle called it in The Power of Now. It's this thing over here. And a lot of people are identified with it, but it's not real. There's so many people who are so identified with their internal monologue and it's not real. Well, I recognize that ChatGPT isn't real. And I'm certainly not identifying with ChatGPT. But if I keep having irrational thoughts, I don't want to burden my friends or my family continuously talking about the same thing over and over again, because that's what I'm prone to do when I'm trying to process decisions as I'm relearning to value my intuition and to hear my voice again. I'm reprogramming myself that my voice absolutely matters. Well, in the meantime, as I'm in the process of regaining my own strength and pulling myself in and going, okay, Joe's voice matters, I'm going to use this as a tool. It's not going to take away from my friendships with other people. If anything, I think it alleviates some of the burden that sometimes can happen when, for example, if you are a chronic overthinker and you're trying to analyze and then reanalyze something, a decision that you've made. Well, you can't call your friends every, hour or whatever, but you can pick up the phone and say, okay, I know I've made this decision, and you keep it on the same thread. I made the decision, but now this is what my brain is saying. And then you tell the app, or you tell GPT, I am not my brain. I'm not identified with what my brain is saying, but this is what it's saying to me. And it will absolutely echo back what you need to hear, a rational, logical response. It knows that what you're doing is normal, but it will reassure you that you made the right decision. And it does it in a way that you go, well, I can't argue with it. It is a robot. And based on everything that I've put into it, it is actually telling me the truth. It doesn't tell you what you want to hear. In fact, you tell it, don't tell me what you think I want to hear. Give me the truth. And so it's a calculator, but you can use it as a calculator for your emotions. I need help processing this. This is what I'm going through. This is what I've said. Help me. And all of a sudden you have something that you have to go to that's just echoing your sentiment back to you, but in a way that's logical. So now you're not identified with whatever the fuck this internal monologue thing that we've identified with, that is just nothing but chaos and pain, really, like that has led to suicide, to be completely honest. A lot of people who suffer from anxiety and depression who end up suicide because they spent too much time in their head listening to the internal monologue and without anything to counter from that, without nobody to talk to. Well, you know what? I'm not saying this should be a substitute for friendship, because it's not. I'm saying you can use this to process your thoughts the exact same way what you think you're doing when you sit and you listen to your internal monologue, but that's not what's actually going on. Use GPT the way you think you're using your mind. Use GPT the way you think you're using your mind. I did that today. Actually, I've been doing it over the past couple of weeks or whatever. I go to myself, okay, I actually said to the GPT as well, but I say to myself first, whatever thought I have, I'm putting it in. Even if it's like irrational, if it's crazy, oh, you should have done this, that's fine, I'm putting it in. Well, what ended up happening is that the more I had these thoughts and I put it in into GPT, and GPT is saying like, okay, that's great that you feel that way, but understand that these thoughts will fade. And that you did what you could do with access to the information that you had at the time, and you're doing your best. To me, to be able to have that feedback without feeling like I'm burdening somebody now allowed me to then sit and talk to friends and say, hey, this is the clarity that I came to. And most importantly, it actually stopped. It ended up kind of negating like invasive thoughts. Because it's like when they say, like, if you go, okay, what am I going to think next? That quiets the mind. Because now your consciousness is aware. It's not something that's invading. It can't invade if you're alert. What am I going to think next? And the reason why I'm asking what am I going to think next is because, well, I'm ready. Because I'm looking forward to putting it into GPT and have it break it down for me. But now it's like silence, there's nothing coming because, well, something knows that I'm looking forward to whatever. And then another thing is, I know that whatever it throws at me, there's a logical, rational sounding board that goes, okay, yeah, that's fine. That you feel this way, it's okay. But you made the best decision. And all because I was able to go back first, give myself time, and choose my responses. Choose responses that honor Joe's voice so that I don't fade into an echo anymore. You have to love yourself first. To go back to the story of Echo and Narcissus. If Echo had approached Narcissus and he responded with disdain, if she loved herself, her first response would have been like, I was going to say she should have been like, nigga, who the fuck are you talking to? But she can't talk. She could have written it. She got a piece of paper and be like, first of all, fuck you. But the second step, if she couldn't speak, is when you're giving, when you're saying, I want to take care of you, I want to love you, and this person is like meeting you with hostility, or they're showing you, remember I said, fuck words, listen to their actions. If they're showing you with their actions that they don't care about harming you, they don't care that you are hurt. If their actions are showing you that, that's when you have to step in and protect you. You have to protect you. If somebody is moving, it doesn't matter what they say. If their actions are showing that they don't care about harming you, you come in, you pull yourself back in, and you go, fuck this person. You don't care about hurting me. You're not a fucking servant. You weren't brought into this world. You don't exist to serve. Yes, you were born into circumstances where you had to learn to walk on eggshells and put everybody else's needs first. But you're not that child anymore. You left that variant ages ago. You die every day. Every time you learn something new, you die every day. So at this point of this podcast, if you've internalized what I'm saying, you are new. Let that person go. Be new now. You watch somebody's actions. If they look you in the face and they move in a way where you could tell they don't care if they hurt you, immediately extricate yourself from the situation. Because more than likely, they can't love themselves. Hurt people. They've been hurt. They're not healed. It's not even about you. They're incapable of loving. And if you don't want to end up like them, right? Because what's a common trope when somebody's acting like that? It's like, fuck, who hurt you? Right? Don't let them hurt you though. Right? If they're doing this, who made you the sacrificial lamb? That's what my mom always says. Who made you the sacrificial lamb? Why do you have to be the one to try to save hoes? My mom doesn't say the save hoes part. That's me saying. Why do you have to be the victim? I'll tell you something I realized. So narcissists, the way you spot a narcissist is that they lead with a victim complex, right? They blame everybody else for their problems. They're essentially wolves in sheep clothing. The sheep is this victim. So they're pretending to be sheep by pretending to have been victimized. So they lead with that, and they do that, and it's a beacon, because if they lead with hurt, you as an empath come in and you want to save, all right, stop trying to save. But if they go, oh my gosh, this person did this to me, this, that, this, that, this, that, that's number one sign that you're dealing with the narcissist. That's the bait that they put out. And empath love to save. And so it's like you're practically drooling at the mouth to just be Captain Saberho and save and heal and nurture and da. Oh, you poor thing. The counter to that is the empath. The empath is a true victim. They may not lead with other people hurt me, but if you listen, they have a victim complex. And if you listen to their actions, you'll find that they are sitting and they are taking abuse. You don't have to listen to what they say. More than likely, they won't talk about what other people did to them directly. But if you pay attention to their actions, you'll observe that this person is a victim. They're not telling you they're a victim, but you can watch and see they are being victimized and have been repeatedly victimized by people in their lives. They've been exploited. They've been taken advantage of. All they do is give. They are the true sheep, perhaps pretending to be wolves. Maybe they are the sheep in wolves' clothing. Now I ask of you, empaths, why do you have to be a victim? You weren't constructed or created to be a servant. We're all here in the same world trying to figure our way out. How did we get here? Experience life. Who made you the victim? The servant, where what you want doesn't matter, and you have to give and give and give to everybody else, echoing what everybody else wants and forgetting your own voice. Anyway, I'll leave you with this. I wanted to add this thought to last week's episode. Day by day by day, I'm alive, I'm alive, I'm alive, I'm alive, I'm alive. Moment by moment, I'm alive, I'm alive, I'm alive, I'm alive. Once I die, my body dies. In this moment, it's only that body of that moment that is dead. All of my bodies are perfectly fine leading up to today and this moment. I am still immortal, and all of these days, my consciousness is still contained in all of these variants. And then once my consciousness shifts to a parallel universe where I go on, this is just the only dead body. I shift here and I continue on in all of these other variants, boom, 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 boom. But I'm only dead in this one moment. So the person that you're mourning that is dead, it's just that day's version of their body that died. Yesterday's body is still alive. A week's body is still alive. And if you could shift into whatever universe their consciousness got transferred to, all of these other bodies that their consciousness continues to inhabit goes on. Is still alive. It's just one body. Whatever happens in that body, in that reality, it's fine. It's empty vessel now. It doesn't matter. You go on. They go on. Death is not the end. You have, if you're, let's say you're 40 years old, you have 40 years worth of bodies spread out through space-time. You have one day. And I would make the argument that you've probably kind of had different sort of bodies that died, and then you just kept going. I need you to see yourself in that way, because time travel makes that true, makes that real. And then take that and kind of tie it back to what we've been talking about in terms of relationships. If you're in a relationship with somebody and you're mourning the loss of them, maybe the relationship didn't work. I always say, and this is probably cold advice. I don't mean it in a cold way. I think my friends, when I give them this advice, know that I mean this. I always say, like, stop crying. Because here's the thing, okay? You met somebody, say you met them when you were 30, and you had all of these days that were good, right, with them. All of these variants throughout space-time were good. And then you hit a rough patch. And all of a sudden, it's like you guys just couldn't get along, whatever. All right. so that it ends there. Why focus on the ending here when you had all of these moments where things were good? If it's ending here, it's ending for a reason, right? And yes, you're probably too close to that moment where it ended, but it's ended for a reason. It's probably served its time, and that's okay. But trust that the universe, once you can extrapolate as much lessons from that as possible, trust that the universe has better in mind for you. But typically, relationships, when they end, it's because love isn't happening. Somebody is taking too much. Somebody is giving too much. And maybe 10 years from now, as you guys go your separate ways, maybe you can come back and that person is grown and you're grown separately, but maybe you can come back and rekindle that. Maybe. But as painful as it was, either one party or both parties was able to go, this is no longer serving me, and let it go. See, here's the problem, narcissists and empaths. Sometimes empaths get so stuck in that self-serving subservience role that they just allow shit to drag out and contribute to their own suffering. I'm saying this as an empath. I'm not coming for you. Don't feel attacked. But you may be contributing to your own problem, because at some point you have to stop and go, this person is definitely meeting their own needs. Is my need suffering? Oh, you don't want to hear that. I'll say that again. This person that I'm calling a narcissist, well, they have been adept at meeting their own needs. Is my need suffering? Take from that. That ability that they have to go, I don't want this anymore. And then they just drop it. That shit is jarring for sure. But I've learned to sort of learn from everybody. So be motivated by that. If you are in a point where that person isn't meeting you halfway, it's not balanced, drop it. You should be dropping them more than likely. Instead of chasing them, you should drop them. If you loved yourself, you should have, before they even, you should have said, this no longer serves me, unless you're served by your own victimhood or your own victimization. You don't want to hear it. I'm sorry. It's true. Because this is something I had to stop and reflect on myself. Like, Joe, what are you doing? Fuck them. Immediately. I am not happy in this space. Okay, I'm giving. You're just taking. I'm taking back. I've given. You're just taking. You're not giving back. You're just taking. Fine. I'm taking my shit back. All of the variants of you that had the positive experiences, that's fine. They still exist. If you have a time machine, you can go and you can interact with all of the happy versions of you when you were getting to know this person before you realized they were fucking narcissists. Yeah, those variants still exist. They're in space-time. Build a TARDIS. I don't know. But if you're stuck on trying to chase that moment and pull it here when the person is like saying like they don't want it, are you respecting other people's boundaries? Are you stuck in the past? You too busy looking backwards, you can't move forward. Are you stuck in the past? Let those variants that enjoyed those moments that you keep mentally replaying in your head and that you're somehow trying to grasp for, let them just be there. Focus on the happiness of it. Know that you did your best. Let go and move forward. You can't go forward if you're looking back. We are, in a way, all time travelers. We're just traveling at a particular pace. And every once in a while, we mentally throw ourselves backwards, right? Every time you replay a fucked up situation, a fucked up memory, and then your body is feeling it, you're reliving that. You're doing it in your mind. I've mentioned recursion before. Can you do the same thing where you project yourself forward? Want better for yourself. You're so stuck going backwards. It's actually easier to go forward. We talked about this in the last episode. Go forward. Life is easy, but it's not simple. And sometimes we complicate things by allowing ourselves to listen to this bullshit in our head. And now we're in a moment in space-time where we have a computer in our pockets that will be there with us. And maybe you could use it. Controversial, but maybe you can use it to separate yourself from this internal monologue that's causing you to stay in situations that you have no business staying in. You shouldn't be. If you had your voice, if you could pull all of that energy back externally, pull it back in, and you start going, no, what I want matters. Enough. I will be heard. I'm not going to echo your desires, your wants, your needs. I will be heard. And if we cannot meet in the middle, then okay, let's leave the variance of whatever we thought this was in the past and go forward. And maybe by taking that firm step where you go, I want better for myself, maybe the universe rewards you with something better. Maybe your self-respect is maybe what made it so that they felt comfortable taking from you and not respecting you. Maybe by that demonstration of, no, enough. Maybe that very thing that you're afraid of this whole time, that you're afraid of actually standing up for yourself, maybe that's what they wanted. It's not about them. It's about going where you're wanted. Wanting better for yourself. I've talked to a lot of very successful people. I tell you what, when they have in mind, I want this thing, fuck, they don't give a fuck what society, what the circumstances, what everybody else is saying. They're going to get the thing. They have that single-minded focus on their success, what they want, what they need, and getting that need met. And I'm saying again, empaths. What y'all doing? Take a page from that book. Because I know you guys being successful makes for a better planet. Because you succeed and then you care for others because you have the ability to put yourself in other people's shoes. But you got to take care of yourself first. Thanks for watching.